Subscribe to Mantold for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Tonight was supposed to be dinner, our anniversary. Instead, I'm in my old pickup, parked 30 feet from the house, watching my wife kiss another man in our living room. The yellow light hits her face, her brown hair curled just right, her hand on his chest. That tilted smile, that laugh. I used to love that sound, used to believe it was real. Now, it cuts like a taunt. This morning, I caught a strange cologne when she brushed past me at the door. I told myself I was imagining things. Turns out I wasn't. I don't knock. I don't scream. I don't ask why. I just sit there, hands locked, knuckles cracking. That small sound drags me back. Windowless rooms, cold blue light from a screen, me waiting for the signal. Then he leans in. Their lips meet. Slow. Casual? Like it's their routine. On the seat beside me, an envelope. Her signed divorce papers, stamped by the court. Arrived this morning. No note, no call. Just papers, demanding my signature. 7 days. They think I'll sign. They think I'm too tired to fight, that I'm harmless. They forgot. Men like him used to be my job. I take a breath. The light inside goes dark. Their shadows vanish from the window. I don't need to see more, because from this moment, I know I won't just survive this. I'll end it. My way. My name is Bryce Cole, 39. Born in a small river town in Oregon. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Where a light left on in the kitchen past midnight was enough for neighbors to guess what was happening inside. At 18, I left, joined the Air Force, then got pulled into a special tech unit under the Department of Defense. The job demanded silence, so I became quiet. Years in windowless rooms, watching the world through screens and classified reports. I learned to trust data, not promises. 15 years later, I retired, moved to Utah, started a small cybersecurity firm. That's when I met Erin. She was an event coordinator, always smiling, always pulling people into her orbit. Compared to me, quiet, withdrawn, she was sunlight pouring into a locked room. We fell hard. 18 months later, I proposed. On our wedding day, I watched her walk toward me, veil floating in the wind. And I believed I had finally found a place to anchor. Erin brought color into my life. Mornings with black coffee already waiting on the table. Notes tucked into my shirt pocket. Eat something green at lunch. Evenings with jazz playing while I worked in my office. I used to think, if peace had a scent, it would be coffee and her perfume, blending under warm yellow light. 9 years later, we were living in a white 2-story on the edge of Salt Lake City. Green fence around the yard. Tomatoes and lavender in the garden, plants she loved. Garage full of machines and security prototypes I tinkered with. Every night, I'd hear the key turn, her footsteps coming through the door, and I thought, I knew this life by heart. I never saw myself as the perfect husband, but I believed I was dependable. I gave Erin space, business trips, late nights, endless meetings. I never called to check up, out of respect and trust. If only I had known. That trust was just the mask she wore to do what she wanted. Maybe I wouldn't have smiled so easily every time she came home. The early years of marriage were calm, like a still lake in autumn. I worked, I came home, and she was there. She made the house feel alive. Weekend trips to the farmer's market, cooking dinner with Billie Holiday playing in the background, surprising me with concert tickets, where we'd sit in the back row, my arm over her shoulders. We never had kids. The official reason, not the right time. And I believed, as long as we still loved each other, the family was whole. Erin never argued. She just smiled and said, "We've got plenty of time." That smile. Back then, it was enough. My firm was small, but steady. It gave me a sense of control. The basement office was my world. Glow of a monitor reflected in my coffee. The hum of cooling fans, like a steady heartbeat. Erin rarely came down there. Or at least, that's what I thought. I knew her habits by heart. Checking her phone first thing every morning. Calling someone on her drive home every night. I never asked who, because I trusted her. That trust, my anchor, was also the crack in the hull. There were signs I should have noticed. One night, Erin made lasagna, my favorite. Poured me an extra glass of red. We laughed through dinner. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, said, "I need to take this." She stepped into the bathroom for a few minutes, came back smiling, like nothing happened. I told myself it was work. Now, I'm not so sure. Sometimes, when I walked into the living room unannounced, she'd flip her phone face down, force a smile, change the subject, and I let it go. Told myself it was nothing. But deep inside, a part of me, the same instinct that once kept me alive on the field, was whispering, something's wrong. At night, after kissing her forehead and wishing her good night, I'd head down to the basement, the house silent, only the wind slipping through the cracks. I thought that silence meant safety, that everything was fine, but really, it was just a curtain, hiding what I wasn't ready to face. If I'd paid closer attention back then, maybe I would have realized I was living in a story whose ending had already been written. That Wednesday afternoon started like any other. I was in the basement office, checking a security system I'd just delivered to a client, when I got an error alert from one of my test devices at home. I had built that system myself. Rock solid. Almost never wrong. Curious, I pulled up the console. One red line flashed on the log. Hallway camera. Triggered outside of schedule. That only happened when there was sound or movement. I rolled the feed back a few minutes, and there she was, Erin, leaning against the doorframe to my office. Light from the living room caught her brown hair, made it glow amber. She smiled, tilted her head toward someone standing just outside the frame. Her voice floated in, soft as a draft slipping through a crack. He never comes down here when I say I'm busy. Don't worry, I'll handle everything inside. My chest tightened. That morning, she hugged me before work, her perfume mixing with fresh coffee. I thought that was the smell of peace. Then, a man's voice, deep, confident. Good. I don't want to leave any trace. The weight hit me hard. I didn't need to know who he was. That sentence alone told me everything. I scrubbed forward. Erin walked into my office, sat in my chair. She opened the drawer, pulled out a note, scanned it. Then her hands hit the keyboard. My screen lit up. She had my password, the one I believed was unbreakable, unless you'd watched me type it. I sat frozen. The hum of the fan, the only sound in the room. The concrete floor suddenly cold against my spine. I didn't confront her, didn't ask, didn't fight. Instead, I quietly reactivated every part of my test system. Every camera, every mic, configured to send copies to a private server, far beyond her reach. Within a week, the pieces came together. Erin kept calling the same number, saved under T, G. Her voice on those calls was different, lighter, drawn out, sometimes laughing, like she was guarding a secret. Saturday night, she told me she had to meet a friend, planning the year-end event. I checked her car's tracker. Destination wasn't a restaurant or a conference center. It was a hotel, 20 minutes away. So I tapped into the hotel's camera system. An old skill, one I never thought I'd use for this. At 8:47 p.m., the glass doors slid open. Erin walked in, long coat, hair perfectly styled. Beside her, a tall man, gray hair, navy suit. Even through the screen, I could almost smell his cologne. They walked close. At the counter, his hand rested on her back. Not rushed, not hidden. Their reflections in the glass behind them looked like two people who had belonged together for years. I snapped a still, ran it through facial recognition. 3 seconds later, the result flashed. Tomlin Gray, divorce attorney, 46, famous for gutting husbands and handing everything to their wives. I didn't have to guess anymore, and I knew this was only the surface. I sat in the dark, screen glow on my face. Tomlin Gray's photo staring back. Cold eyes of a man who lived to win, even if winning meant destroying someone else. Memories hit like cold water. 2 months earlier, Erin had started talking about space, how each of us needed more of it. I thought she just needed time. We'd both been busy before, and I believed in giving her room. But now, I knew that space had been filled long ago. I pulled up the recordings again. At 3 minutes, 22 seconds, her voice, clear as a blade. I told him, when the time is right, it'll be over. Then his reply, I'll handle the rest. Just stay calm. That word, calm, cut slow and dull. In the military, calm was survival. Now, it was the word they used to plan the end of my marriage. The next morning, we had breakfast together. She wore a pale blue blouse, hair tied back. Her hand set a hot cup of coffee in front of me. The spoon tapped porcelain, a tiny sound that pounded in my head. She smiled, asked if I wanted more sugar. I nodded, smiled back, hiding the fact that in my mind, pieces of a plan were already locking into place. That night, she said she'd be home late. When the garage door rolled open, I was already watching the feed. Before pulling in, she stopped on a quiet street. Tomlin stepped out of the passenger seat, leaned in, whispered something, then kissed her cheek. That image burned into me. 4 years ago, she kissed me the same way, at the airport, before I flew to Europe for an emergency OPI. Back then, I carried that warmth with me the whole trip. Now, it returned as a ghost. Sharp, bitter, lodged in my throat. I zoomed in. Her smile in that moment wasn't mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, coffee gone cold. Beside it, an old black notebook from my military days. Inside, strategies, protocols, methods I once used for covert operations. I never thought I'd need them at home. But this time, my mission wasn't just to identify a threat. It was to decide how I'd deal with it. There was one file I had set aside, untouched since the day I left the service. My finger hovered over its icon. I didn't open it, not because I was afraid, but because I knew, the moment I did, there would be no way back. From that day on, our house became a silent battlefield. Erin still asked, "How was your day?" Still hung her coat on the same hook. And I still answered, still smiled, sometimes even joked, so she wouldn't suspect. But between the small talk, I logged every glance, every twitch of her hand when she picked up the phone and turned away. Her schedule began to change. More urgent meetings. When I asked, her reply was quick. Just work. Nothing important. Once, she'd tell me everything. Colleagues changing hair color. The boss bringing donuts. Now, her answers were short, sharp, like slamming a door. One Tuesday afternoon, an alert from the living room mic. Unusual sound detected. I played it back. Erin's voice, low, urgent. He doesn't suspect. Soon, my heart slammed in my chest. He wasn't Tomlin. He was me. In the background, the faint clink of a spoon in a glass. A sound once warm, now cold. I remembered the nights she'd sit with tea, waiting for me to finish work. That sound had meant comfort. Tonight, it meant something else. That night, I lay beside her. The lamp cast gold across her hair. I remembered our first winter together, her curling into me, her cold feet pressed against mine for warmth. Now the distance was only inches, but it felt farther than any deployment I'd ever known. The next day, I made a move. I told her I had a 3-day business trip. She smiled, asked if I wanted her to pack me food. That smile was too calm, like my absence wasn't a gap, but an opening. I left, but only to an apartment 10 minutes away. Laptop, portable surveillance, and one data file I hadn't opened since the military. For 3 days, I tracked her. Every step. On the second night, the feed showed them leaving a fine restaurant. Tomlin held the car door for her, his hand brushing her back. Small. Familiar. Too familiar. I zoomed in as they entered the hotel, golden light from the lobby glass. Their reflections side by side, like they had been walking together their whole lives. When the elevator doors closed behind them, I didn't need to see more. Enough. But then, my phone buzzed. Message from the text monitoring system I had planted. On screen. Did you get there safe? Everything's fine here. Miss you. A message meant for me, but written for someone else? Miss you. Glowing on my phone like a velvet-wrapped blade. Soft outside, steel inside. My finger hovered over reply, then stopped. I shut the screen, placed the phone face down, pulled the camera feed back up. Erin walked out of the bedroom, hair loose. Gray sweater I bought her last winter. She sat on the couch, turned on the TV, but her eyes stayed locked on the phone, thumb moving fast, corners of her mouth lifting, just slightly. I didn't need to know who she was texting. In the days that followed, I didn't just watch, I collected. GPS logs, credit card bills, call records, all piling up on my screen like a map of betrayal. Lunch receipt at a cafe near Tomlin's office. 2 concert tickets, Thursday night. A men's coat from a store he frequented. Friday night, I came home before her. A thick folder sat on the coffee table. Not legal papers. Evidence. Enough to bury the lie. Then the garage door. Her heels across the floor. "You're still up?" she asked from the doorway. Yeah, waiting for you. I kept my voice steady. New perfume on her, not the one she used to wear, mixed with the cold air from outside. She sat down, asked what I was working on. I smiled. Just reviewing some old things. Her eyes flickered. Then back to normal. I stood, walked out, left her with the folder on the table. That night, I slept in the basement. On the feed, I watched her step to the table. Her fingers brushed the folder's cover. She paused, then pulled back and walked away. The next morning, the folder was still there, unmoved, except for one thing. The top page had shifted, half a centimeter. Erin poured my coffee, smiled. As she leaned in, her shampoo hit me, and I was pulled back to a fall morning. Her laughing in the kitchen, while I wrapped my arms around her from behind. The memory slammed into the present. I clenched the cup so hard, coffee spilled over my hand. I set it down, wiped the table, made a joke to cover it. But in her eyes, I caught something. A look, measuring, like she was testing my reaction, the way I had been studying hers. The game had shifted. It wasn't just me laying traps. Now, she was probing too. A week after the folder night, Erin suggested dinner. At our favorite restaurant. Her voice was soft, her eyes calm. Too calm. I couldn't say no. That evening, I wore the navy suit she once loved. Erin chose a black V-neck dress. Simple, elegant, perfect. When we walked in, warm light bounced off the glass walls. The sound of silverware and muffled laughter. Like another world, far from the storm tightening between us. We sat by the window, city lights flickering like small fires outside. Dinner went smoothly. Too smoothly. She mentioned Paris. I responded. She laughed. But her eyes, always darting back to the clock. Once, then again, when dessert arrived, I placed my car keys on the table. The metal clinked, sharp against the wood. Erin looked up, eyes narrowed. Slowly, I pulled a brown envelope from my pocket, pushed it across the table. A gift? For you. She opened it. Inside, photos. Receipts. Recordings. Every piece lined up neatly. No creases. Prepared the way I prepared every mission. Her eyes stopped on a picture, fingers brushing the edge. And in that silence, I heard my heartbeat. Heavy, slow, like a countdown. She looked up, lips trembling, then pressing shut, thin and hard. No panic. Only calculation. What do you want? Her voice cold, cutting through the air. I leaned back, the wood of the chair hard against my spine. The truth. Here, now. The weight settled on the table. Silverware sounds from other tables faded. Erin breathed in, slow, exhaled. A smile touched her lips, but her eyes stayed still, like water right before the storm. The truth is, you've known for a while, and I knew you knew. Her words flipped the board. I thought I was leading, but in her gaze, I saw it. Maybe I'd been the one led all along. She leaned closer, whispered, but what you don't know is why. I sat frozen, heart pounding against the murmur of laughter around us. The restaurant shrank, the golden light pooling on our table, trapping us inside it. Why? I asked, voice low, trying to stay steady, but my throat felt strangled. Erin rested her elbows on the table, turned her glass slowly in her hand. Light refracted across the rim. Her voice, ice. Because you left this marriage. Before I did. My brow tightened. She didn't stop. Didn't give me room to answer. When you came back from the military, you were here. But the part of you that mattered wasn't. You spoke to me, but never really heard. You looked at me, but never truly saw. Tomlin wasn't someone I went searching for. He found the space you left behind. Under the table, my fist clenched, nails digging into skin. But I said nothing. Because in my mind, the late nights in front of screens, watching her on cameras, suddenly turned into a mirror. A mirror showing me a man who had already stepped out of his marriage, without even realizing it. Erin's voice cut through. Do you know why I didn't leave right away? She stopped turning the glass. Her eyes locked on mine. Because I wanted you to notice. I wanted you to ask. But you chose silence and surveillance. My heart stuttered. Cold sweat along my spine. So everything you did was to force my reaction. I growled. She sighed. Set the glass down. The sound of crystal on wood, like a final note. At first, maybe. But then, I went too far to turn back. The warm light of the restaurant stabbed at my eyes. The laughter around us. The clinking of plates. But between us, a storm cloud, heavy and dark. She pushed the envelope back toward me. You think you're leading? But the moment you chose silence, we both lost control. She stood, smoothed her dress, then leaned down, close to my ear, whispered, "The worst hasn't happened yet." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me with the envelope, the golden light, and words sharp as a pin in my chest. I stayed at that table long after Erin left. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, a brown ring clinging to the rim. The envelope sat there, staring back at me, whispering her last words. The worst hasn't happened yet. When I stepped into the house, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the silence of a late night, but the kind that drains the life out of a home. The kitchen light glowed dim, casting shadows across a folded note on the table. I opened it. Her handwriting. "We need a few days apart. Don't look for me." A few days. A soft way of saying she was gone. Upstairs, her closet was empty, only hangers swaying when I opened the door. The bathroom shelf, bare. The perfume bottle she used every morning, gone. In the kitchen, the white mug with the cracked handle, her favorite, gone too. I sank onto the edge of the couch. The house still had walls, but the soul was missing. Then my phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. Unknown number. I let it ring out. A message followed. "You've lost more than you think." The digits were unfamiliar. No name. No area code I knew. Cold crept up my neck. If it was Tomlin, why not just say it? And if it wasn't, who else was watching me? I opened the laptop, checked the system. Living room camera still online. But the last 3 days of footage were gone. Wiped clean. The log showed access from an unknown device. At the exact time Erin and I were at the restaurant, they hadn't just erased it. They wanted me to know they had been here. I sat still, screen reflecting my own face back at me. The worst Erin warned me about. Maybe it wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was a bigger game. And I was already cornered. I scrolled through the feeds. Garage. Front porch. Back door. All still running. But the last 3 days? Gone. Not everything. Just those days. I leaned back, closed my eyes, tried to remember. 3 nights ago, I worked late. Erin said she was meeting a friend. I checked the camera then. Nothing unusual. But now, that nothing felt like a void. A hole cut out of reality. The phone buzzed again. Same number. I let it die. Another message flashed. "By the time you realize, it will be too late." My spine turned to ice. If it was Tomlin, he'd be direct. This wasn't him, which meant someone else knew me, knew about me. I grabbed my coat, stepped into the garage, started the truck. The night was sharp, my breath white in the air. The road to Tomlin's office stretched black, only broken by yellow streetlights sliding across the windshield. The building was dark, except one window upstairs, blue light faint behind the glass. I parked down the block, watched from the shadows. A figure moved across the frame, small shoulders, slim build. My chest pounded. Erin's face flickered in my mind. I stepped out, walked slow along the sidewalk. But before I reached the building, the light went out. By the time I stood under the window, only darkness and the smell of damp air. Back home, the shift was instant. The living room window cracked open, though I had locked it. Cold air seeped in, carrying the scent of wet wind. On the table, the envelope. Still there, but empty. No photos, no receipts, no recordings. I tore through drawers, cabinets, shelves. Nothing missing. They weren't here for valuables. They came to erase the only leverage I had left. On the sofa, wedged in the cushions, a small note, black ink, hastily written. "Now who's the one being watched?" I dropped back into the chair. The ink still fresh, which meant whoever left it was just here. The clock ticked overhead, each beat, a countdown. The worst part wasn't losing Erin. It was knowing, from this moment forward, my life no longer belonged to me. I sat on the sofa, the note still in my hand, the yellow light casting my shadow on the wall. It wavered, as if warning me nothing would stand still anymore. Outside, the night was silent. The clock ticked so loud, I could hear each second passing. Once, that sound meant safety. Tonight, it felt like someone breathing. right behind my neck. I looked around. The chair where Aaron used to read, empty. The kitchen table, still stained with coffee rings, quiet. Every object was a memory. But now, they were evidence of a life already broken. Aaron's words echoed. The worst hasn't happened yet. I thought she meant losing her. But now I knew. The worst was not knowing my role anymore. The hunter, or the hunted. I pulled the curtain, looked out onto the street. Under the sick yellow streetlight, patches of dark and light crossed like a chessboard. I used to think I held the pieces, but tonight I realized I was just one being moved. Then I saw it, a small red dot, blinking from across the street. Like the reflection of a lens, it vanished the second I locked eyes with it. My pulse surged. In the military, losing control meant losing everything. Here, losing control might mean finding out who was truly playing this game. I opened the drawer, slid the note inside, shut it. When I stood, my eyes caught the ceiling corner, a faint green light, blinking. A camera, but not one of mine. I let out a dry laugh, sharp, hollow, filling the empty room. Maybe it was a warning, maybe a challenge, or maybe an invitation into a game I was never meant to play. I switched off every light, let the darkness take the room, and in that darkness, I saw it clearer than ever. This was only the beginning.